We're back, a weekend off, still plenty of content for you, but it does mean that we've got plenty to discuss in today's Arsenal transfer show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal transfer show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend. I hope it was treating you well, and I hope you're ready for a brand new week of news, insights, and of course, hopefully, breaking stories. Good morning to you all joining us live in the chat box. Greatly appreciate you all being here. Simple Unity, Carl, Grantley Poos, Kevin, we've got Stephen, Paul, we've got Mike and Mark, we've got Lee and Tom, we've got Afsar, Steve, Morgie, Evan, Wilson, Sweating Merlot, Brian, Jamil, Trader Mike and Gary. We've got Maximius and Runs with Cows. We've got Paul and Martin and Lee. We've got Rich, Arasilki, Southport Gooner, Somto. Plenty more of you guys and girls too. Thank you so much for being in here and joining us in the chat box. I hope that you enjoyed the shows that we put out over the weekend. A massive thank you to FK and to Ed Aarons from The Guardian, of course, as well, for joining me, for having a chat about all things Arsenal for a couple of days. Of course, this is the final week of which I'll be producing a show for you before I go on holiday and have a bit of a break, a proper break, going off to Canada next week for a fortnight to really relax. But I will be pre-recording some content to go out kind of partway through that week. Of course, if any big news does drop, it's pretty easy for me to drop a record and put a show out for you guys and girls as well while I'm out there. But I'm going to be mainly taking as much of a break as feasibly possible. So that's just your warning at the start of this week that this time next week, I'll be on a flight to Vancouver. Yeah, that's happening. And I'll be very honest with you. I'm like, my anxiety about it is mad. I don't know why. It just is. When you're doing something every day for like 3 years and then you change it, like there is anxiousness about taking a break. I'm not coping too well with it, to be fair. Mrs. like, it's going to be fine. You're going to be all right. They're still going to be there when you get back. I'm like, I hope so. I hope so. Dominico says, how's the plant? The plant's good. Plant's surviving. Plant's alive again. It's enjoying the warm weather and being in the right soil now for a change. But it's going in the right direction. So that's definitely a positive. Balathi says, how was the stag weekend? It was good. It was good. I feel fresh now. Didn't feel too fresh on Saturday morning. Friday night was the big one for some reason. We planned it out. Big day on Saturday. It just happens, doesn't it? Friday turns into the big one. And Saturday was a struggle. There was a lot of weary eyes at the lunchtime meal on Saturday. But by Sunday, I was feeling good again. And this morning, I feel refreshed. It was good to take a break. I don't think I really got to experience a break as such because it was quite an intense weekend. But yeah, it was good. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Anyway, let's, before we get people crying that my intros take too long again, let's jump into today's stories, shall we? Do drop a like on the video. Thank you for all the likes you dropped on the videos of the weekend. I had someone say, Tom, we need to kickstart the 1,000 like challenge again, which I always appreciate, but I do think with Canada coming up, we should probably try and target that for when I get back. But, close to 50,000 of you were watching or listening on audio platforms to the weekend content, which is amazing. So thank you. Let's start with an annoying story, harrowing, frustrating, irritating, disgusting story. A lot of you probably on social media would have spotted this yesterday. As a lot of you know, I'm a big F1 fan. I do enjoy watching the races. And as coming back from Bristol yesterday, I was watching the start of the race. Didn't get to see the grid walk done. Martin Brundle wasn't there this weekend. And so he wasn't the typical guy doing the grid walk where, of course, a Sky presenter basically walks through the paddock and the grid, and any famous faces they spot, they'll go and try and talk to. Sometimes they speak to them, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they engage, sometimes they don't. If they want to, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But Bukayo Saka, who was approached during the grid walk, just didn't want to speak. I mean, he's had a whole season, of course, of interviews and having microphones put in his face. The season's over now. He was there in a kind of just a friendly capacity. He was there in a casual capacity with the England squad, not doing any work, just enjoying the race and didn't want to speak, didn't want to talk. which he is absolutely entitled to do. He's entitled to turn down the opportunity to speak if he wants to, but my goodness, people then embarrassed themselves on social media, didn't they? And let's just say how it is. There was loads of racism afterwards. There was a lot of racism on social media. Some of it not. Some of it is just hate-filled and horrible. But we do know that there is a lot of racism that came out afterwards. And it was disgusting to witness. The horrible thing to say is that Saka, I'm sure, is used to this by now. And that's a horrible thing to have to put forward. But we know that he's got experience of it. We know that he's dealt with these instances before, and he's well prepared for that. But we just know that if this was a white player that was approached and did the same thing, and we've known this because there are people that have this happen to them in the past, and simply the backlash has not been the same. I think we saw clips emerging of Pep Guardiola refusing to speak. It went nowhere near as viral as this. It wasn't picked up anywhere close to what this was. And it is what it is. You know, it's just horrible racism, and it needs to be called out. So if you see it, call it out, report it, do what you need to do to help the situation, and really try and, you know, do as best as we can to help try and dial this down. Yeah, it's horrible. It is horrible. The amount of absolute morons that are allowed access to anonymity online and allowed access to accounts where they can just spew whatever they like. It's a very big problem, and sadly doesn't look like it's slowing down at all. But I had to give my thoughts on that. Moving forwards, though, to Thomas Partey. Of course, over the last kind of weeks or so, we've heard that there's been a number of progressions on the Arsenal side of talks over a new deal, but there's not been a breakthrough as of yet with Partey and Arsenal. And that, of course, opens up the opportunity for Partey to have discussions with other clubs. And one of those clubs, according to multiple reports, including the Times, is that Partey is in contact with Barcelona, or at least his representatives are in contact with Barcelona over a brand new deal. And it isn't, as I said, it's not surprising whatsoever that this is the case. It's not surprising that that we're moving in this direction, because if Arsenal cannot agree a new contract, he will get interest from other clubs. If Partey is to leave, Arsenal would need to react. They would absolutely need to go to the market and bring somebody else in. Of course, we're expecting Martin Zubimendi to be joining the club. There's been suggestions that maybe that deal could get confirmed later on to comply with different financial books of kind of the next financial year or the next kind of year for Sociedad. So that might take a little delay. We'll wait and see. It is now the 2nd of June. The window is officially open. And of course, we'll close again on June 10th and reopen on June 16th. But so far, let's wait and see what happens with Partey. Any major breakthrough on either a new renewal or, of course, a agreement with another club, we will talk about it. But there are plenty of very concrete suggestions that already Barcelona have been in discussions with Partey's representatives. So let's wait and see how this one transpires. Now, on the incoming side of things, with Xabi Alonso and his Real Madrid future set, we know now that a chase of Rodrigo is not going to happen. Plenty of reports in Spain and elsewhere suggesting that, of course, he will be staying with Real Madrid for this summer. It's one of those stories that comes up, gives you a little bit of hope, and you're like, oh, that could be quite good, before quite quickly dying away. And that does seem to be what this deal, or prospective deal at least, with Rodrigo has kind of turned into, that he is an unrealistic target, and that he is choosing to stay at Real Madrid for the foreseeable future. That could be in the form of a contract extension, but there is absolutely zero chance, it seems now, of Rodrigo leaving Real Madrid and therefore joining Arsenal. So Rodrigo is a no-go, and Arsenal's hopes of signing a wide player will have to land somewhere else during this window. Just for the latest on Benjamin Sesko and Victor Gyökeres, of course, I was away for the last couple of days, so I wasn't able to give kind of the specific latest on either of these two while discussing that with FK and Ed. And of course, we recorded those two shows with Ed and FK before the news on Friday or rather Thursday evening, I think it was, from Fabrizio Romano regarding Arsenal engaging in talks with Sesko. I should clarify this. I did, and I should say this. I did a little bit of digging around the Sesko claims, and I got quite a bit of pushback, actually, around the idea that Arsenal are engaging in talks or that anything's really progressing, specifically with Sesko. I think this is still open. I think this is still very much Sesko or Gyökeres. I don't think it's necessarily cut and dry that it's one over the other and that Sesko is the priority despite those reports. There, of course, are talks ongoing, I believe, to my understanding, on both fronts. Andrea Berta is someone who takes a rather holistic approach to the way in which he looks at transfer dealings. He likes to have progressions on multiple targets, and then of course where you've got more information about what type of deal you can get for different targets, that helps you inform about what type of deal you would then do or prefer to move for. If there are better market opportunities in one sense, they could move for one over the other. I don't think it's cut and dry that it would be Sesko over Gyökeres. Certainly, it seems that it's more likely it would be Sesko, but I don't think it's necessarily as black and white as it was kind of feeling that it was to be the case on Friday. So hopefully there's more on this week. Hopefully we'll hear more as this window is now open. And of course, other clubs will be in discussions for both targets as well. But Arsenal and their striker target remains a priority, and let's just hope that it's one that Arsenal can get a breakthrough in moving forward. You know that I lean slightly towards Sesko. I think we've kind of covered that all. He is ever so slightly my preference of the two. I think it makes the most sense to me to do that deal. Lastly, one of the other big reports of the weekend was around this 200 million spend. Of course, financial expert Kieran Maguire was speaking to the BBC, in which he described Arsenal as having a profit and sustainability regulatory freedom to spend 200 million during the summer window and not really affecting too much about what it goes on. I want to add some extra context. This PSR is definitely something Arsenal always trying to comply with, always want to be comfortably within. But it isn't the main financial restrictor for Arsenal. The main financial restriction for Arsenal, as always, while they are involved in European competition, is UEFA's financial fair play restrictions. These are much more stringent than profit and sustainability regs. And so for that reason, despite the claims being absolutely fair that within PSR, Arsenal could spend around £200 million and be within those PSR regulations, it wouldn't necessarily mean that they would be within UEFA financial restrictions. In fact, it would probably take them quite close to those restrictions. And Arsenal always like being well within those UEFA financial restrictions in case of any emergency situations, in case of anything coming, anything happening that was unexpected or surprising, so that they can maneuver and pivot should they need to. So just want to temper a little bit, of course, the idea around, £200 million and that being with it. What I should say also is that if Arsenal are successful in selling players, and that includes the likes of Sambi Lokonga, that includes Reece Nelson, that includes Fabio Vieira, players that could, of course, leave the club during this window for a transfer fee, Jakub Kiwior or Alexander Zinchenko. These are all players that could yet leave the club for a transfer fee during this current window. Leandro Trossard, Gabriel Martinelli's futures are not guaranteed either. Then, of course, that would open up the ability for the club to spend plenty more if they're able to sell. So that does free up some space within UEFA financial fair play if they can sell. So that is ultimately what the financial situation is with Arsenal. So I can't really explain it any more than that. Right, let's go to part two. There's over 1,500 of you watching on YouTube. Thank you so much always for the support and the kind listenership. It is greatly appreciated. Do drop a like, do subscribe, and do bear with us as we go now into part two and your questions right after this. Right, this is part two of today's show. We'll be jumping into the chat and tackling plenty of your thoughts, feelings, queries, and questions. Now is the time to jump those into the chat. Use a capital Q. It really does help them stand out and makes it easier, of course, for me to read them. And I'll try and go through as many as I can over the next 20, 30 minutes or so. So let's do it. Let's scroll up because I'm probably missing quite a few already. Jasper says, why is Saka in the England squad anyway, considering the injury that he had, the amount of time that he has missed? Why haven't they just given him a break? Because he's fit now. So he can be selected. He can play. Like, they have the choice. Thomas Tuchel has the choice. Thomas Tuchel's not had an experience yet in selecting Saka because he wasn't involved in the last squad. So there's probably some keenness to involve Saka in this squad. It's only for, I think there's one World Cup qualifier and then a friendly against Senegal. So I don't think it should be too intense for Saka. I think, is it Andorra they're playing? England fixtures. Yeah, Andorra in a friendly. Of course, that's why they're in Spain. Of course, Andorra is kind of a very small country between France and Spain, I think, and that's why they were at the that's why they're at the Grand Prix yesterday. But when it comes to the Senegal game, again, that's a friendly. I think it should be pretty chill, to be fair. Starfish says, people just want to go against Arteta. Rumour has it Mikel wants Sesko and Berta wants Gyökeres. Anything anti-Mikel, it's just brain dead. Yeah, I mean, it also is not true, by the way. Not the case. Like, it's not a case of like Arteta has kind of nailed himself to the post in terms of Sesko and Berta has nailed himself to a post in terms of Gyökeres. It's just a report that Andrea Berta has an appreciation for Gyökeres and kind of, with his arrival, put his name more into the fold than perhaps it was prior to him being at the club. So it's not like there's a clash. There is alignment in anything that Arsenal move toward in terms of transfers. Arsenal won't be moving for players unless, of course, there is alignment on those. And there'll be discussions and, you know, debates and meetings around who indeed is the best one to go for after collecting as much information from prospective talks with both players. But I agree with you. It does seem that Arsenal fans, some Arsenal fans, I should clarify, just love to thrive on the idea of creating division and this idea of it has to be one of the other. And, you know, that means that Berta and Arteta are arguing, and that's just not true. Let's go to Ryan, who says, Tom, why is the number 2 goalkeeper spot such a heated debate for Arsenal? In my opinion, Ronwen Williams, African Cup of Nations goalkeeper, would be perfect. It's important because Arsenal have been quite fortunate in David Raya's availability. And if he was to be injured, Arsenal need to have a competent number 2. Now, I think that Carl Hein is enough, to be honest. I think he is good enough to be Arsenal's number 2, and I think it would make sense for Arsenal to go into the market and have probably an experienced number 3. We see it with City and Scott Carson. We see it with United and Tom Heaton. We know that plenty of clubs have had experienced older number 3s as emergency backups and as also as mentors for younger keepers. I'd be very open to that happening at Arsenal, and I think that's the route I would personally go for to save money. Juan Garcia does not like he's going to be joining Arsenal this summer, despite having personal terms all but agreed last summer. He is, of course, now a much highly regarded keeper than he was then and being looked at by the likes of Barcelona for a future number 1 spot. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen for Arsenal. Kameni says, Tom, do you think Carlos Baleba can make a good fit should Partey leave? Absolutely. Problem with that is I think it would be quite expensive. Sally says, by my calculations, a Partey exit leaves us a backup short. What sort of profile player would you go for? I'll be sad to see Partey go, but it'll be good to get those wages off the books. I think it has to be a similar one, you know, more of a specific number 6, not necessarily like a progressive pivoty like Zubimendi necessarily is. I think it would need to be an out-and-out DM that we would need to replace Partey's presence in the group, and not necessarily someone who can play as an 8, someone who specifically is a 6. Christopher says, a lot of Arsenal content creators are speaking poorly of Sesko for his goals and assists in the last year. Food for thought. Isak scored 6 goals for the season before he left Sociedad. Let us consider this before speaking. Of course, that's kind of the go-to for any critics of Sesko. I much prefer looking at how they've outperformed their XG. I think that's the better metric when it comes to kind of measuring their potential progression, their potential output, because if one is a better finisher than the other, they're going to get the same level of chances when they move to Arsenal. You want the player that's the better finisher. You want the player that's doing more with a more limited number of chances, and that player, of course, of the two is Benjamin Sesko. Jay says, hi Tom, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I remember you leaning more towards Gyökeres early in the season. If so, what changed your mind? I think that a lot, it's kind of been around kind of the 40 to 60% range of like the two. If you say that 50% of the side is Sesko, 50% of the side is Gyökeres, I guess it kind of changes. Sesko started off the season, you know, he did quite well in the league phase, a little bit of a dip, and we just kind of go through phases, don't we, of like leading towards one player and the other. I would say that the majority of the time I spent going all the way back to last summer, there's definitely been more of a sway towards Sesko. Gyökeres's numbers are quite alluring. They're quite convincing. And, when you see someone putting in those numbers week in, week out, you suddenly start to think, oh, but then you take a step back, you reflect, you look back over the course of the whole season, you look back at the numbers. Now we have them available to us, particularly those XG numbers I was talking about a second ago. And that, I think, you're allowed to have a mind to change. No one should ever criticize you for changing your mind on things. What's the point of having one if you can't change it? If you nail yourself to a post on one thing, you're not helping yourself. So always be open to your mind being changed. Always be open to seeing different evidence. And after seeing that data, seeing that evidence, seeing that argument, having a different opinion afterwards. It's a very mature thing to do. Marvin says, I noticed chatter on Watkins yesterday. Any truth in the stories? Personally, I'd be pleased. I mean, Arsenal's interest in Watkins has not died away. It's not gone. He is seen as something of a potential market opportunity, but Arsenal have other priorities at this stage. Angie says, Tom, I'm warming to the idea of Sesko. However, if we don't get a left winger or creative midfielder, we're going to be in the same problems as last season for the final third. If we were, our problems are the same. I agree. I think Arsenal need to go out and get another forward at least. An attacking midfielder would be a luxury addition. Of course, you've got to think about the players that already exist, like Wineri and Dowman, of course, that are coming through. But I would love to see an attacking midfielder also signed as well. Aiden says, I watched a video that showed all but the top 3 in Portugal are championship level standard. Would our fans be so in favour of Gyökeres's numbers if they were the same, but he was playing for Stoke? You could argue he did it with Coventry, but the numbers, of course, were half that of what he's managed to score in Portugal. Ty says, Gyökeres has been overlooked last summer and January, and this summer, City, Liverpool, Bayern, Madrid, Barca, PSG, etc. haven't gone for him. So what do they know that fan channels don't, who keep calling for Gyökeres? Sniper Scope says, with Rodrigo staying, Leah costly and Liao, I think that probably is, and Milan reluctant to sell. Are you worried that we don't get the needle moving in the left forward position? Not yet. It's the 2nd of June. I'm not worried at all. There is far more of the window still to go. So let's wait and see. Beans on Toast says, beans on cheese on toast or cheese on beans on toast? This is an easy one. It's cheese on beans on toast. You want the cheese melting on top of the beans. You don't want them to just disappear underneath the hot beans. So thank you, Beans on Toast, for your question. It's a very important one with a very obvious answer. New Physics says, please do not underestimate ball striking ability. If scoring is the hardest thing in football, then Gyökeres is elite at this ability. Whereas this system got us in 3 years, adapt to the system for Fiji. I mean, if you want to have some conversations about ball striking, feel free to have a look at Sesko's list of goals. It is quite phenomenal how he indeed strikes the ball, and that's why he is outperforming his XG more so than what Gyökeres is. Rand says, isn't FFP a little bit of an excuse? The worst punishments are a slap on the wrist. Not really, no. It's not an excuse at all. They are regulations. They are rules that Arsenal want to comply with. There are clubs that have faced punishments for breaches of FFP. They're not always fines. Sometimes they are transfer bans. And so, no, it's not an excuse. James says, how do you explain that despite having the same targets for up to 12 months, Arsenal have not finalised a single signing in this window? Nothing about rivals, just us. Why have we moved? Why have we not moved? I mean, Jamesy, obviously Arsenal are very close to securing that deal for Martin Zubimendi. We know that. That's been going on. Also, things change throughout the course of a season. And I mean this with respect. It's a little arrogant to expect Arsenal to be the only club in for these players. Arsenal to be the only club that are around. Arsenal, of course, are interested in multiple targets. They're also very open to market opportunities. They don't like necessarily moving for players if they think there could be something else better available. Arsenal have done that before and moved early and then missed out on later opportunities in markets, of course. So I think it's important that we consider the fact that when a season is completed, a lot has changed in 12 months. A lot has changed. Targets that they previously had, they've not necessarily hit the same way this season as they had in previous seasons. Price tags change, demands change, representatives have more interest from other clubs, which changed the approach to talks. A lot of representatives of clubs don't like to engage in specific talks until after seasons are finished because they like to see if they can get their client an even better deal from the number of clubs that then are interested. Some transfer windows open at different times. Some clubs raise with their interest at different points and periods. So no, it's simply a case of things change over the course of 12 months, and you can't expect Arsenal to exist as a main character energy, if you will, within the transfer window, despite the fact, of course, that they already have progressed on a lot of fronts, specifically with that Zubimendi situation. Sean says, Tom, I just saw a video clip on Twitter of Pep Guardiola refusing to do an interview with Sky at the Grand Prix. Why are they bullying Saka? They will say it's because Pep has won. That video of Pep, by the way, is not from this Spanish Grand Prix, I don't think. I think it's from a previous one because Martin Brundle wasn't doing the grid walk from what I saw. So it was an old video, but that was just kind of being brought up as an example of where there wasn't outrage for that, but there is for Saka. We've already kind of covered this. We all know the reasons as to why. Let's go to Martin, who says, in a number of chat and comment boxes, I've replied to a number of posters who bemoan a lack of cups and success of when asked to define that success, they go very quiet. Success is a subjective terminology. Some people think trophies equal success. Everything else is failure. I don't subscribe to that. I think success and failure is a spectrum. I think I've asked Arteta myself about this idea, and he thinks it's very concerning that people associate success just being this binary thing of success and failure, cups or no cups. I was combining trophies and cups there. But yeah, I agree with him. I think it is dangerous to look at football in that way. Humphrey says, we need Sesko. He'll be great for us. He's got what it takes to suit our system. And the good thing is expectations on him won't be as high as they are compared to I don't agree with the last point, Humphrey. They absolutely will be as high. There's this striker signing, whoever it is going to be one of the most highly anticipated signings and the highest pressure of a signing that I can remember. So I don't agree with the last point at all. DG says, he talks more sense than some of it. I don't know who you're talking about, DG. Rahul says, what do you think about Barcola? He will be a good option if Nico Williams' wages turn out to be kind of a concern. There were some rumours from El Nacional as well. Don't know about the credibility. Barcola is a player that I've talked about in the channel a lot. I'd be very open to seeing Barcola come to Arsenal. I've not heard it really mentioned, though, that Arsenal are looking at him, to be fair. Lee says, why are we so worked up when the window is just up? Because people love to be angry, Lee. People love to be angry. People love to get behind their keyboard and spew horrible things. They love it. They absolutely love it. Darba says, given some lucrative squad numbers are available and expected outgoings, do you see any obvious squad number changes to exist? No, it's already changed, Darbas. It's already been confirmed. So Wineri is moving to number 22 and Raya is moving to number 1. They are the changes for next season. Face is asking about Barcola. I've kind of touched upon that. I've heard nothing about Barcola. I'd love Barcola at Arsenal. I think he's an exceptional talent and really could be refined into a brilliant, brilliant player. But no, I've not heard anything on that side as of yet. Amar Organa says, Tom, on seeing the podcast concerning Henri's comments, the anti-Arsenal fans have put Henri above the club. Henri's a lightning rod for a lot of kind of Arteta and Arsenal critics in particular, because he has been quite critical of Arsenal. I have a lot of issues with some of the things Henri has said. Some people feel he can do no wrong because of who he is. I appreciate him as a player. For me, he's the best player to have ever played for Arsenal. Doesn't mean that he's not incredibly wrong a lot of the time on what he says about Arsenal. He is very wrong. He's pulled out some quotes in that overlap interview that made no sense whatsoever. But he is in a live recording environment, I guess, so you can say things and you look back at those things you've said while live and you go, yeah, I hope at least he does, because some of the things he said didn't make any sense. But some of the stuff he said was fair. The criticism that Arsenal should have got to a final or lifted a trophy in the last 3-4 years, I think is a fair criticism. I think Arsenal should have got at least to a final in the last 3 or 4 years. But some of the things he said about Sterling and ice baths, they were rather silly. Knowledge says, come on, Tom, what is the view on Max versus George? Should Max have been disqualified? I can't stand Max Verstappen. So I don't know what on earth he was doing. It was intentional. I thought the post-race interview with the Sky reporter was horrible. Showed such disrespect to the journalist asking the questions. He was clearly angry, clearly irritated, but didn't really show much respect. I saw a lot of people complaining that the reporter, sorry, I don't know her name, was like, shouldn't be giving her opinion, when she was kind of saying that we understand you're an outstanding driver who pulls off some brilliant moves like we saw in Imola, for example, but these moments kind of take the shine off it. I think that's a completely fair thing to put toward Verstappen. And he just kind of brushed it off like, you're entitled to your opinion. But it does, because he is a brilliant driver. I don't particularly like him, but he's up there with the best drivers we've ever seen. Some of the moves he pulls off, some of the things he does with that car is unbelievable. But he's a flawed individual. Like he is flawed and has kind of these issues that he deals with in the wrong way. Who do you think gets the number 3 shirt? Says John. I don't know. I'm not sure who'll get the number 3 shirt from Kieran Tierney. Marzu Skelly's keeping 49 from the sounds of things, so maybe it'll be a new defender that comes in. Maybe that'll be happening. Olu says City and Liverpool are the 2 greatest points achievers in Premier League history of 199, 98, and 97. Arteta is the only one to consistently get near them, and we have more points than Liverpool over the last 3 seasons. That's a good stat. Stephen says, Tom, good morning. If Partey were to leave, would you consider a dip into the free market to get players in as backup, or Gomez as backup? Also seeing Lamptey's contract expiring. I mean, is the player that is on the market in that particular position going to be good enough? That's what you've got to ask. If we have a look at the midfielders whose contracts are expiring this summer, of who could be available for those positions, you've got to have a really serious conversation about, are those players good enough? Angel Gomez is more of an attacking midfielder from Lille. He's not a defensive midfielder, so I'm not sure he'd be the right player to go for. I'm just looking down the list of potential options, and they're not really standing out, to be honest, as kind of a player to replace Partey. The only one I've seen on there that could make a slight bit of sense is maybe Abdoulaye Doucouré, but again, he's just not really of the level. He's not necessarily an out-and-out 6 either. So, no, I don't think I'd go into the free market for the number 6 position. Chris says, Henry can say whatever he wants. He's the main reason why we can brag. Is yours gold to rivals? We should be honoured that Henry is even associate. And a lot of people feel this way. I don't, personally. I feel that you can appreciate a player for their achievements as a player, but it doesn't mean that you have to agree with what they say. If you feel that way, cool. You're entitled to feel that way. But I'm also equally entitled to challenge and disagree with what they've said. People feel Zubimendi will be number 3 if he is to join, or rather when he is expected to join this summer. Paul says, why are we so poor at tapping into the South American market? I don't know, Paul. I don't know. I see those deals for Nottingham Forest's interesting. I don't know how much of an influence Edu, if any, has had on those deals. It's difficult to know. But it's easy to sign players kind of, I guess, when the level is lower, to make those deals make more sense for a team like Nottingham Forest, I guess. But they've always kind of done things like Danilo, of course, you remember, who came in. Most wanted says Sasha Tavolieri stated that Gyökeres is in agreement to join Arsenal on personal terms. As I said, Arsenal under Berta progress on multiple fronts and like to do multiple holistic strategies when it comes to transfer targets. We might agree deals with a lot of players personally, but then not decide to move ahead on a club-to-club level. So it's not a linear thing. It's a multifaceted type of way of looking at transfers, the way Andrea does this business. So, yeah, there you go. Knowledge says Tom Rachel Brooks is the journalist's name. She always does a great job in the pen after and always gets golden moments out of Lando. Lando was on great form yesterday. Mario Kart. I think you might regret saying that. Franklin Goodwin says the same people saying the manager isn't bigger than the club are acting like Henry can't be argued against because he's a club legend. Doesn't make much sense. That's a really good point. Really, really, really good point. Carl says, do you think Carlos Baleba is the ideal top target for next summer's window if we hopefully can get a left winger and a striker done in this window? Maybe. I'm not sure next summer if it's the right way to move, but it could be. He's only 21 years of age, so it could be that we move for a player like Carlos Baleba. Maybe it happens this window if we can't renew a deal for Partey. Baleba's definitely someone who's impressed a hell of a lot since arriving at Brighton. Jace, is there credibility in the reports of MLS contract renewal going poorly? No, I've heard nothing to suggest that's true. Truth North Gooner says, no problem with Sesko. What we are missing is a genuine left winger. Sesko can play with Havertz in a 2-striker attacking system. Marino can support them, and we need another number 10 to assist with Odegaard. 88 MPH says, Tom, is the squad size limited to 25? Can a team not buy more and then loan them out? Yeah, it is limited to 25. Of course, 17 of those need to be... 17 maximum can be non-homegrown players, but some players don't count in that 25-man squad. Like Dalman wouldn't count, Waneri wouldn't count, Lewis Skelly wouldn't count because they're not over the age of 21 yet. So that gives you more room to move, but that is what the limit is, 25. You can go over that though, yes. Do you know who was on better form, Josh? Piastri, absolutely right, Josh. Piastri having an excellent season. I'm not sure if I don't really warm to Piastri too much. He did, I think he some of his post-match interviews were better after Spain, but yeah. True North Gooner says no problem with Sesko. We kind of covered that, didn't we? Let's scroll up a little bit more. I'm sure I've missed some. Daniel says Ebery Eze as a left winger, yay or nay? I'd bring in Eze. He doesn't have to be as a left winger. He can play in multiple positions, but yeah, I absolutely would bring in Eze. No, Tizer, there's no news yet on the 115 charges of City. We are hoping for one this year, but nothing as of yet. Greg says, how would you rather see 120 million euros spent? Isak and Sane, Watkins and Rodrigo, or Sesko and Williams? If you can get Isak and Sane for 120 million euros, that's 100 million pounds. I think you probably do that, don't you? Yeah, Isak has to be the number one target if he's available, but he's not available. So, unfortunately, it doesn't seem too feasible. Let's go to Raul. Says thoughts on signing Sesko, Nico Williams, and Rodgers. Rodgers is more of a versatile player than Eze, who can play as an attacking midfielder, centre forward, left or right centre mid, and left wing. He could ease the transition of Sesko. How much would Villa ask? I think they'd ask for a lot, well over £50 million. But I would be open to Morgan Rodgers. I think he's a very, very talented player. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to see Morgan Rodgers join Arsenal this summer, but I don't see that happening. Paul says, if Partey leaves, do we have a preference for replacement? Kind of covered that as well. We talked about Baleba. Carl says, are there any academy players other than Max that you can see getting some minutes next season, maybe defensive players? Marcel Washington is another really appreciated youngster. He's a left-sided defender, a left-back, can play slightly further forward as well. He is someone that the club really do like and are signing on a permanent deal this summer after a successful trial. And he says, massive McLaren fan. The old red and white livery was the reason I support Arsenal. As well, the reason why I support McLaren, of course, with Arsenal's links there. Oscar and Norris are so funny and insane. Marley Salmon says, Jack, absolutely, Marley Salmon is somebody that could also potentially make a step up, but he's still very young and he's got a lot of competition in defence, so could be pretty tricky. And yeah, Claire says, if you'd know if there was anything on the charges, it would be everywhere. It's a really good point. There are some stories that just are so big, of course, like the City thing that, that you'd know about it before we talked about it here. That's for sure. Eminem says, morning, Tom. Do you rate Mbeumo or is there somebody better? And the thing about Mbeumo is he's more kind of a right-sided wide forward than a left-sided one. And so that's why there aren't necessarily the obvious reasons to move for him. Yeah, so I don't think that's one that will happen for Arsenal because he's more of a right-sided. Unless something dramatic changes, I just can't see that happening. Is that something on my camera lens, or is it just the light? I think it's the light. That was really. I was like looking at the camera. Like, is that something? I don't think it is. And she says, Tom, why are we linked with so many ex-City players? I think obviously, if you look at any player Arsenal are linked to, they used to play for someone decent. The higher up you go in terms of competitivity, the more likely it is those players have played for some of the biggest clubs in the world. That's just what happens. The more you get more competitive, the way in which that you enter the market for bigger and more high-profile players, they would have already had some other big clubs on their rap sheet. So I think it's just a part and parcel of looking now at better players. Hashtag Danny says, what happened to the Sfera Nipan links? Since Villa don't have Champions League next year, do we have more of a chance? Yeah, obviously that was it was assumed really that Villa were looking the most likely to sign him. But that's gone very quiet. Arsenal interest, I assume, remains, as does Girona's, but I don't see anything update-wise on that front. Hasn't been a name I've seen much at all. Jack says, who do you want at left wing now? Rodrigo is off the table. I still look at Nico Williams, but he did come away from the Spanish training camp with another injury. That is definitely affecting how I see Nico Williams. His injuries are persistent, and I don't want to sign someone that has these issues. It makes me like the idea of Eze more because he can play in those multiple different areas. I like Barcola a lot, as we've mentioned, but haven't seen really any concrete links to him. So yeah, there's not necessarily like obvious candidates that are standing out. There's a lot of kind of those in that group. You've got Williams, you've got Rafa Leao, you've got Ademola Lookman, you've got Antoine Semenyo. But right at this very moment, it's not like that key one. Rodrigo looked like a bit of a unicorn signing, but doesn't look possible. Nico Williams, his injuries are stacking up. And if he hadn't had one this summer, I think that has changed things. Claire says a YouTuber done a challenge where he started in Auckland outside the founder of the McLaren team house and had to travel to Monaco for the Grand Prix. Norris arranged for him on Instagram to have VIP. That's brilliant. What a story. Arthur says no mention that Sterling's son has signed for Arsenal. Now there's a mention. Thank you, Arthur. Tizer says, we went for Sesko and Garcia last summer, but the players didn't want to move straight away. Was it a mistake not to do deals where we could have loaned them back, thus securing lower prices? No, because Arsenal, when they spend that money, they want to get a return immediately. So no, Tizer, it couldn't logistically have worked. Ryan says, you've said before that Drew doesn't particularly think of him that much as I think it's more to do with an Arsenal situation than a Liverpool one, Ryan. I think it's about his fit at Arsenal with Odegaard already being here. It's not to say that he doesn't rate him at all as a player. He's clearly very talented, but I think it's about the fit for Arsenal more than it says about Liverpool. Maximia says, Tom, did we discuss the Champions League finals? Any chance that we could get Doué or Barcola? Doué, absolutely no chance. Barcola, maybe. There could be openings there because of obviously Kvaratskhelia and Doué being so clear starters. Barcola could be a clear start for Arsenal. Xavi Simons says, hand up. Absolutely. Maybe he's a player that could be looked at as well. Not really much going on the front of Xavi Simons so far this summer. Barry says, what about Jack Grealish? No, thank you. Muga Baby says, Sesko, Zubimendi, Eze, Sane, Hater will be a 10 out of 10 window. Kaio says, looking at how electric Barcola was when he came on in the finals makes me feel like we really should try for him if he's available. I think there's a massive opportunity there. Daniel says, even though he's only 9 years old, is Sterling Jr. already a better player than his old man? Jojo says, you can change to support Tottenham. They've got a trophy if it's all they want. Or Man United, they've got 2 in 3 years. Come on and go and get excited elsewhere. The whole argument of like go elsewhere to, support or get a trophy or whatever, I get it. I also get it when people kind of talk in those ways about, Spurs or United or whatever. Like, I get why people say it. I also get the frustration at seeing those clubs lift silverware equally. I understand that. But if you seriously would swap your position with those clubs, I have serious questions about the ability to assess different clubs because obviously that isn't the right way forwards. GS says, welcome to our beautiful country, man. I hope you will miss the fire season and make sure you visit the aquarium. Is that a Vancouver thing? I don't know. I don't know. Sam says, remember when fans were calling for Inzaghi? I know. He certainly has bottled a lot this season, has Inter Milan. Their results this season, of course, they've taken them quite far, but yeah, it's not gone down particularly well. Unfortunately, Coppa Italia semi-final defeat to Milan, Champions League final embarrassing defeat to PSG, losing the league to Napoli. They dropped some important points like drawing away at Parma and losing to Bologna and losing to Roma at home. They really did bottle the end of the title race, did Inter. So, yeah, there's a lot of ironic kind of similarities between Inzaghi and some of the criticisms that a lot of the people that wanted him to replace Arteta were highlighting, as well. So, yeah, Jack says Big Ange is getting sacked, and so he should. and so he should. Yes, they absolutely should. You lost 22 games in a Premier League season. You finished only outside the relegation spots because the teams that were in the bottom 3 were awful. Had any of Leicester, Ipswich or Southampton been slightly better, they could have been. They didn't get to 40 points. Of course, Ange should be sacked. Of course, they should sack their manager. And says Tom, Spurs had a great season. A great season. Spurs, who finished on 38 points, lost 22 games, had a great season. Anthony, I don't know why your standards for Arsenal seem to be so high if they're so low when it comes to defining what a great season is. Amandeep says Villa need to sell. Do we still go for Watkins if he's available? Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Martin says, I think he's joking. I don't think he did. I don't think he is. I don't think Anthony. I never know these days of Anthony. I never, ever know if Anthony's joking or not. Soup says, getting sacked and getting a statue. Crazy. What a season. Kai says, I feel like Ange is very lucky that he won the cup for his potential. Oh, the Europa League is a joke. The Europa League is horrible. Terrible competition. He says Tottenham was below Arsenal to win a trophy, cannot compete because Arsenal is in a better position. I mean, Arsenal couldn't even be in that competition. They finished, what was it, 37th, I think the best way Elliot put it. Congratulations for Spurs for finishing 37th in Europe. So there you go. Ty says Ornstein said that there are issues with the Miles Lewis-Skelly contract situations. Did he? Has he said that? Let me have a look. Let me see if I can find that David Ornstein, Miles Lewis-Skelly. I've not seen anything on that front, but I'll see if I can find it for you. Not seeing anything, mate. There's nothing to suggest David Ornstein said that. Let me see if I can specifically search for these two terms, and then that'll help bring anything up that might give some indication of that. Okay, here we go. No. So, despite a rapid rise, the players' deal, this implied. Jonathan Wilson of The Guardian has said they've got to sort out Miles Lewis-Skelly's contract, which expires next summer. I think talks have not been going well from what I hear, that Real Madrid are sort of sniffing around. I've heard nothing. Jonathan Wilson's obviously very well connected, but I've heard nothing to suggest that's the case, to be honest at all. Oliver says, I think he just said that Miles' contract is a bit more tricky than Ethan's, but not that there are any concerns. It's difficult. You know, you just broken into the team for your first season. You're only just signed a professional contract last year. That first big deal, you know, Arsenal don't want to set it too high because there's obviously room to grow. Clubs might look around for an opportunity, but I wouldn't be worrying too much about Miles Lewis-Skelly. He loves Arsenal. Laughing Man says 90% of Spurs fans are satisfied. 40% of Arsenal fans are not happy. Trophies matter. Athletic fan poll. I think that says more about Spurs and Arsenal than anything, to be honest. I think if Arsenal had won the Europa League and finished 17th on 38 points, the calls for whoever was in charge to go would be ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Ryan says, Tom, I have 7 free Audible credits that I've forgotten to use. Any football books you'd recommend? I don't listen to football books. I'll be honest with you. They're not really my spiel. My downtime outside of this and work is not to listen to more football. It's just not. My go-to books, I can give you some recommendations. How to Be Right or How Not to Be Wrong, quite good by James O'Brien. I do quite like listening to those. James Acaster's Guide to the Quitting Social Media is also a very good book. Would recommend that. And Before and Laughter by Jimmy Carr. I really enjoyed listening to that. If you want Arsenal ones, I mean, My Life in Red and White by Arsene Wenger and 89 by Amy Lawrence are two I've listened to and did enjoy, but they're probably the only football books I've listened to. And there's one other audio book as well. By Darren Brown that I really enjoyed listening to as well. Let me see if I can find where it was. Yes, Darren Brown's Boot Camp for the Brain. That's a really good listen as well. So yeah, but make sure you check the chat box and check the comment section. I'm sure there'll be loads of people who are giving you loads of suggestions as well. James says the money we earned from the Champions League in finishing third from Spurs and Chelsea winning the Europa Conference. I mean, the money is just ridiculous from the two. It's not why you enter those competitions as a primary reason, but obviously, I think the team that finished bottom of the Champions League phase earned a very similar amount of money than Chelsea did for winning the Conference League. That gives you a bit of indication about what you get for being in those competitions. Fendragon says the best argument when comparing us to Spurs winning the Europa League is to ask anyone how they would set out a plan to win the Europa League and then ask if that means that we're going backwards. Absolutely. I really like that. Hashtag Daddy says the Conference Cup, which West Ham have won a couple of years back and struggling to get back into the top 5 till the last day. Too much noise from Chelsea. Yeah, Chelsea. Anyone celebrating their Conference League victory, it's just not worth even having a discussion about. Amaral Gunner says Tom Spurs' history is good, only has 2 pages, and one of them is an introduction. Jay says Chinese or Indian food. I love both. I'd probably say Indian though, to be honest. There's more I love. If I go and order an Indian, I've got like a plethora of stuff I love. Whereas Chinese, there are things I love, but not as broad for me. But thank you for the question. I love when we always go off on these random tangents about random rubbish. I'm going to scroll up now to see if I've missed anything from earlier on in the show as well, because I'm sure I did scroll over some questions. Let's see. Stephen says, now we've done that one. We've done that one. Are we nearly at the end? Gunnar says, when will Zubimendi be announced? Hopefully soon. But as we said at the start of the show, there could be something about kind of the July finances. They might kind of do it then to make it fit better. There's always something to be said about that. Eminem says, would you be Arteta in if we don't win a major trophy next season? Again, I hate this whole Arteta in, Arteta out bollocks. Like, it's absolute crap. Imagine being someone like, can you imagine for a second? Just close your eyes and imagine you're in the body of, let's say, it's usually children, right? It's usually someone who's not an adult yet. And imagine typing into your Twitter or X bio or whatever the words hashtag Arteta out or hashtag Arteta in. And then imagine the self-loathing that you should go through if you're one of those people. Like, imagine being, and then imagine the shame if you're not a child and you have that in your Twitter or X bio. Just imagine the shame. Imagine the self-esteem that would just be draining away as you type hashtag Arteta in or hashtag Arteta out into your bio of a social media page that you own. Imagine that for a second. What the pain, the self-loathing you must have to write that into a bio of your social media page. Daniel says, I can tell the season is over when the mainstream media are making a huge song and dance over absolutely nothing at the F1. They are bored. I do tend to agree, but there is also an element that is just, if that happened at any point during the season, I still think it would be a big story because Saka's not white. That's it. And that's why there is a big story about it. There is just racism, and that is what it is all about. There is other elements to it, just genuine hatred of Saka for some strange reason. For some, the fact he plays for Arsenal is definitely an element to it as well. But we all know that the leading cause of the outrage is the color of Saka's skin, and that is it. Seaguy says recent time in F1 is boring. There are so many Mars cars that dominate races. You can win every race if you have a supercar in F1. It's true. Yeah, it is a flawed sport. There are flaws about it. So there you go. Jay says Tom is clearly happy with Arteta. I am happy with Arteta being in charge right now. There's no beating around the bush there, mate. No, you've got me. I'm fine with Arteta being in charge. I think we're on the right track. We've just seen Arsenal get to a Champions League semi-final for the first time in 16 years, reaching 2 cup semi-finals, and had a very, very difficult season. Very, very difficult season with the players that we missed, and we still finished there. Other teams like United and Spurs had injury crises and finished as far as they did down the table, and 37th and 39th in Europe. Or 38th in Europe. So there you go. Martin says they should all drive identical cars, and then you'd know who the best driver is. I always get that argument because obviously that's kind of how it works in a way. You'd find out who the best driver is, but that would never happen. Like it would just never happen. You couldn't do it. It would be impossible to do. You wouldn't get manufacturers involved really because Manufacturers get involved because they want to be able to showcase their ability to build cars within the parameters that they are given. And that's the thing about F1. I get it. I get why people are annoyed with that element. But like, you have to be in a position whereby you give them a set amount of rules to follow to build a car within, because it's not just about the drivers. That people forget that. People think it's all about the drivers, finding out who the best driver is. It's not just about that. It's about who the best constructor is as well of those cars. That they make the sport. I agree with Ryan. It's about the construct. They make the sport better because they're constantly evolving it. So if you can't get on board with that, then don't watch it. And I don't blame you for not watching it. I don't blame people who don't particularly like it. You have to understand it, I think, to like it, and that is part of it. Paul says, our football last season was really sterile. What tweaks would you make for us to be more potent? It's depth, mate. It's really as simple as that. It's depth in the squad. It's a depth of quality that when you lose players, it doesn't have as significant impact. So you don't have to adapt and change your system so drastically as we did. So it really is as simple as having strength in depth. We need to be more fortunate. And I want to see us more aggressive. I want to see us quicker. I want to see us better on the transition. I want to see us more aggressive. I want to see us taking more shots. I want to see us being better defensively. Defensively, there were certainly some issues, even though we had the best defensive record of the Premier League still last season. So, yeah, without a doubt. Thomas says, do some of these Anthony Arteta types recall when we played Watford under Emery and conceded a ridiculous number of shots? Crack on if you want to go back to those days. Yeah, look, I think that it's not necessarily about like that, because I don't think those fans necessarily would go back to that, other than the fans that for some reason see Emery as kind of this person who was given a rough ride at Arsenal. They still spent loads of money. They say, he didn't get Zaha, he didn't get the player he wanted, he got Pepe instead. Well, Arteta's not got Rafinha, he didn't get Lisandro Martinez, he didn't get all these players that he didn't want either. They pivoted, they got others, but he's still getting Arsenal into way higher positions and further along than Emery did. So I don't really get that argument. But I think it's more about, it's more the binary side of some fans that just think, trophy success, anything else failure, and that's how it's viewed, when obviously that's not the case. Aoife says, to be honest, the equipment used in most sports fit within parameters. Athletes are obligated to use the exact same as well, just follow the same rules. Roy says, Tom, do these Arteta out as one Ange as manager because he won something and is supposedly more successful? How happy would they have been with 22 defeats? Arsenal Forever says, what did Arsenal look like 4 years ago and where are we now? That's enough for me to give Arteta my trust. Dot says, funniest narrative is that Emery's are better than Arteta and that we should replace. Look, Emery has had a better career than Arteta. There's no debate about that. The trophies he's won with Sevilla, PSG. Did he win one with Valencia? I'm trying to think now. But like he's had a better career than Arteta has so far. There is no doubt about that. Coupe de France, Coupe de la Ligue, Europa League with Villarreal, 3 Europa Leagues with Sevilla. Didn't win anything with Valencia. He's had a better career than Arteta has so far. But like a better manager as of right now, I wouldn't swap them. And so for that reason, I think there's only one argument there. That right now, who the better manager is, if you're looking at who is better for the job right now, it's obviously Arteta. But who has had the better career to this point? It's Emery, without a doubt. There's no debate about that. Thomas says it's more lack of respect people are giving Arteta. It's short-term memory of where we were. Jamin Ben says Arteta has completely changed the Arsenal culture, much like Wenger did in his time. People can't blame him for the transfer mishaps and injuries. A lot of people do put a lot of the transfer stuff on Arteta. I do try and give people an insight into how transfers work, and it's the fact that Arteta has not been delivered despite asking so much of those that are in charge of recruitment to this point. Of course, we've got someone new in charge now. People should be happy that we've changed things. Things behind the scenes have gone differently. Edu's exit was definitely something of a surprise, but the club have used that as an opportunity now to bring in someone of high caliber and an incredible experience at the top level, not promoting Jason Ato, for example, from within, which they could have done. Instead, they chose to go the route of Andrea Berta. That should be seen as definitely a positive step. Giorgio says, but Tom, how am I supposed to enjoy football if I'm not furious all the time? Kai says, let's not let our fan base become like the United supporters that want a new manager every 2 months. Look at where that mentality has got them. Hashtag Danny says, let's not forget Villa and City have spent in January. And so if someone who should be criticised more and there's no excuses, it should be there. I think that's a really good point. There was a lot of thing about, January and clubs like City spent and clubs like Aston Villa spent. Arteta was let down in the January window. Club did not back him in the January window at all, finished higher than both of those clubs, and dealt with far more issues than both of those clubs did. So, it's I think that's a really, really solid point to make as well. I am checking the time, and I'm conscious that we're over an hour already. Thank you so much, as always, for all of you tuning in. It's been a great pleasure to listen and speak with you and hear your questions and read them. If you are enjoying the show, make sure you drop a like before you go. It really does help us out. And if you could subscribe if you're new around here with those notifications turned on, I'd also be very happy to welcome you into our family. So thank you so much. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning for another episode and plenty more right after today. And as always, stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, I've already messed that up. I don't know why I messed that up so much. I think I lost track of the time. I just completely lost track of the time this morning. I'm actually going to be recording with Deluded Gooner shortly. I also completely forgot the time. So make sure you listen to that on his channel later, and you'll enjoy more of this ugly mug. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.